At the end of the day, we teach history because we love history, because we feel a responsibility to history, because we want young people to love history and feel a responsibility to history and to learn things in context so we don't repeat society's mistakes. And some people love it. We get a lot of thank yous.
We also teach history because there is an inherent value just in the way that an adult brain works. There is an inherent value to seeing these nuances and the complexity, and it helps mold young minds into being able to think critically as adults, which in the age of social media and internet might be something we need now more than ever.
And so we're going to keep doing it.
Welcome back to Tea Time with Mare and Andrea.
Today we are discussing our responsibility to history. And I realize that sounds kind of weird, kind of crunchy. However, we started making this channel because we teach history.
And we teach history because
we're crazy.
Because we are crazy. No, that's accurate. So when we started the homeschool program that we run, it was our goal to help students who were nearing the end of their homeschool journey kind of fill in holes that they needed, tick boxes, as it were, for college applications and to help make them successful in college. And one of the things that we knew that was kind of a need, and in fact we had a young man come to us, it was his senior year, and he was pulling together stuff to do college applications, and one of the things missing on his educational career transcript so that he could do all that was American history. So that was the first class we taught.
Right.
And that was why we taught that as the first class.
We kind of taught it for the older too.
We did.
Locally here, we had seen that when young homeschoolers stepped into college, a lot of the colleges would say, you were homeschooled. I know it says here that you took history. So what we're going to do is we're going to make you take history at the college level and not give you college credit for it because you never really took history. And so that was our motivation to teach history so that we could show the colleges that these students not only took history, but they took it in a classroom setting outside of their homes.
Like, and this is the way that we taught it. Here's the, syllabus. When you create a homeschool portfolio, you're often asked, for the topics that you covered, the order in which you covered them, things like that, to kind of back up what you taught. And so we were prepared to do that. Now, we had absolutely zero intention of reinventing the wheel.
None.
We were going to get a history curriculum and we were just going to teach it to these kids because our goal was to prepare them for college. Our goal was not to create a history curriculum.
We had no intention of creating 4 years of world history and recreating a history curriculum. However,
we tried to find a history curriculum that would work. We personally believe in the classical model of teaching history. For people who don't know what the classical model of history is, you teach history over a 4-year cycle. So we're talking world history now, not just U.S. history. And so world history, you teach ancient, medieval, early modern, modern.
Most homeschoolers know this.
Right. This is not uncommon. This is a pretty common philosophy.
Homeschool approach, yes.
For teaching history. So you teach 4 years of world history. So first we went to traditional history textbooks, the kinds of thing that you would see used in a traditional school setting. We pulled those out. We pulled out the AP curriculum, and all of that from a world history standpoint is designed to be taught over 2 years.
At best.
At best.
At best. 1 year.
Like if you're talking AP world history, there are 2 AP world history tests.
Right.
And so you can take year 1 and year 2 to do that. That did not provide us enough material to actually teach it in classical sense.
Well, it didn't provide us enough material to teach it in depth, in context, in a way that it would be memorable or that the kids would care. at all.
Well, and that actually gets to a different part of our philosophy, but let's leave it at it's taught over 2 years right now.
Yeah.
So there, it wasn't suited to the time frame that we wanted to teach. There wasn't enough material for that aspect of it. And we'll talk about how the AP textbooks approach history in a minute, because that's also another part of our personal philosophy toward history. So then we went to homeschool curriculums. And the homeschool curriculums that we could find, and there were quite a few out there, they came in 2 flavors. There was the homeschool curriculum on one side that only told part of the story, and there were there were parts of history that we don't want to talk about because that's uncomfortable.
That might make me sad.
So we're not going to discuss those parts of history. We're going to just talk about the things that make us feel wonderful about being human.
Interesting.
And then on the other end of that spectrum, there are absolutely history curriculums out there that teach all of the horrible atrocities and all of the horrible things that humans have done. And that's kind of
I can't say that I found that in any homeschool curriculum. I found it.
Were you looking in the truly secular?
Nah.
Yeah, see, that's the section where there is some truly secular homeschool history curriculum. And that also, which is a whole different homeschool curriculum thing, where you have truly religious, truly secular, neutral, and that's its own dichotomy.
What we didn't know at the time is that we fall in the middle.
We did.
We figured it out.
We figured out that we're largely neutral. We're not teaching at all from a religious perspective. That being said, we are also not necessarily scrubbing our curriculum of any and all potential culturally religious references. We're not intentionally adding those, but being a product of who we are and where we are, there are things that we don't have somebody that is truly secular in our organization. And also, I'm not sure that that's necessarily the demographic we're looking for. We're happy and comfortable staying neutral.
There are enough organizations out there.
Right. And it's a market that's covered.
Yeah. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel.
Right.
We didn't believe in reinventing this history wheel. But there are so many programs out there to teach history from a very religious standpoint. And if you want that, I can't give you names.
Yeah. Happy to
there are programs that teach history from a very Afrocentric viewpoint, or a very man bad.
The movement actually that kind of encompasses some of that is the very social conscious movement.
Right.
So we are teaching history as a activist standpoint, and I've got some great resources for that.
And it's what everyone is calling
So we're discussing our historical philosophy and why we are writing a curriculum and what we...
So our only goal was to teach the story of history in context. Instead of saying this person came and beat this person and pushed them out, and then that person beat up that person and pushed them out, we need to give you the whys. We need to make it memorable. We need to put it in context. We need to
give kids a reason to care about history.
Yeah.
And so that's when we come back to the train of thought of teaching history over a 2-year cycle. The way that traditional textbooks are set up, the way that the AP program is set up. You only get the battles. You don't only get the battles now. They've rewritten things, so you do at least get the themes. And so you get these historical themes, which is great, but as a student, as a high school student, you're kind of left trusting that textbook writer or that curriculum developer to say that this theme was important, and you just accept this theme was important. And then they'll give you, here are all of the ways that this theme manifests, and you get, 5 or 6 examples of it, and, the historical context for why this movement happened, or why this idea or this philosophy was big at this moment. But you're not getting the background information of how that actually happened. You're not seeing the evolution of these ideas. You're not getting kind of the thread that connects everything.
Right. Like, history becomes very disjointed.
It does. And harder to understand because of it.
And so anyone who's spent 10 minutes in a room with a child knows that their favorite word is why. And as Miss Jordan said, if you can't answer that, she's done with you.
Right.
So we try to always give the whys.
Right. Or at least some of them. I mean, we're talking about history here.
Mm-hmm.
The volume of information that you can cover in history.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole reason that somebody who goes on and gets advanced degrees in history narrows down to like this specific moment in time and, you know, the specific topic and the specific viewpoints. There's so much material there that nobody's ever going to cover.
But even our kids who have been through with us through the entire 4-year cycle, they may not know all the whys, but they can always point back to something parallel and say, human behavior.
Right. And they know some of the whys.
You know?
They should know the most major whys.
So we could
anything.
We could veer off into the world of history.
Oh,
forever. So,
absolutely.
So if we were to open up your curriculum, what would we expect to find?
The story. You expect to find the story of history. And so what happens when you approach it as a story is you get the prequel. You know, you get the story, right? You get the sequel continuously. And it just makes so much sense to them.
In looking at the whole 4-year cycle, you should be able to trace the thread of humanity and of civilizations and how these things shifted and changed and why the world shifted and changed the way that it did. And to me,
they just have such, and I'm just thinking because we've had some of these kids for 4, 5, 6 years. They have such an understanding of human behavior.
Right.
Like, because we'll say something, they'll go, as you do.
Right. No, there are absolutely things that, you know, at this point we can talk about, and this happened, and I can be like, and then next, and the class will just tell me what's about to happen next. Because you start to see the patterns of human behavior, because there are things that humans just do when they're humaning. And you can see that throughout history.
I think I said, and humans humaned last week.
And humans
And they were like,
humaned.
yes, they did.
Because that's just the nature of humanity. And, you know, this kind of actually fits into the historicism, which is one of those things that apparently we're supposed to talk about at some point, because YouTube told me that we're supposed to make a video on that.
Let us know in the comments if that's
if
something you'd like
you're
to see.
if you're interested in seeing a video on historicism, I am happy to go into it, because that's my jam. The philosophy and the theory and all of that's my happy place.
And I think my happy place is making it all relatable, you know.
Which is why we work well together.
Why we share a brain.
Yes, exactly. But part of the reason that we've written the history curriculum this way, part of the reason that this thread, that all of this is so important to the way that we teach and our philosophy of teaching history, is students, especially teenage high school students, if they don't see value in what they are learning, they are going to tap out. If they don't understand the why do I have to learn this, then they're done with it. And to us, history is more a body of material that we can draw from to teach writing, to teach research, because we talk a lot about how do you find quality sources for information? How do you vet your understanding of something?
At this point, that's a life skill.
Which is a life skill. I mean, just knowing whether something is true. Knowing how to fact check something, that if you hear information and you're like, that doesn't necessarily track with what I already know, how do you go find out if that's true or not? Because there are absolutely times where you have a preconceived notion, somebody says something, and you're like, that is absolutely wrong based on everything that I already know, but it's good information. And so you have to switch your worldview.
I mean, adjust, alter, just take in that there might be something you need to keep investigating.
Right.
You know.
And so we're teaching these life skills using history as the medium for it. Reading for comprehension, writing about things that you've discovered, discovering new things, fact checking, and just understanding how the world works.
And so we created curriculum. 4-year series of textbooks. We've been slogging through getting ancient history out. We are so close.
Well, so here's the thing. Ancient history got written, And because we're actually in the classroom teaching this as we're writing it, every year, really every quarter or semester, we're kind of changing up how we're doing it a little bit.
I'm so glad we didn't release it right away.
And we're figuring out what works, what doesn't. We're taking some things out, we're putting new things in. And so we had ancient written, and then we changed how we did things. So we've gone back to rewrite ancient.
Yeah.
Because now it's more in line with how we're teaching now. Because when we taught ancient, we actually taught ancient on Zoom.
We taught ancient during COVID. And so, yeah, that needed some adjusting. So anyway, so these two ladies start a homeschool group, end up writing history curriculum. How did they end up with a YouTube channel?
Ha ha ha! Especially when I hate being on video.
What happened was, during COVID, we were using videos as illustrations for the children because they didn't just want to hear us drone for 3 hours over Zoom. Who wants that in their lives? And so we put these lovely videos on that we would pre-watch the night before, kind of with one eye open, and then we'd show them to the children. Things sound different when you listen to things by yourself than when you listen to them with children. And we'd be like, oh, that was inappropriate.
Because also understand, my filter only exists when I'm around children.
Right.
So things that have language or innuendo, things like that seem perfectly natural and normal to me, and they don't stand out. I can watch a video. I could watch a video intently and not hear 5 instances of a swear word.
But then you're watching a child through Zoom and you're looking at them in the screen, and the same video that you thought was fine was playing, and then you see a child's eye twitch. You're like, ah. And so at that moment, repeatedly, we decided we have to make our own videos.
Yeah, because we have, there are a number of good channels out there with good history videos. Some of our favorites, some that we
still
absolutely
show them.
adore.
We just have to watch them very carefully first.
And some of them actually have evolved to not have as much of that content, but it's just knowing on those channels.
The later videos are cleaner than the older videos. You probably know what we're talking about. I'm not going to say.
Right. So there are absolutely content creators out there. They're doing an amazing job in this realm, but they're really their target audience.
Late high school and college.
It was really college students.
It's AP.
Is it? And well, but we're the first ones. The first ones were college. The first ones were college.
Well, college is AP.
True. And that's how it kind of filtered back into the high school stuff. And I mean, it's content that I enjoy watching myself.
It's so good.
But I can't show it to a room because also understand our teaching classroom is a mixed age classroom, so we say high school. We have students, well, this year's the first year that we actually have 2 different classrooms. So we have the one classroom that is just high school and one classroom that's middle school, but even then, when you're homeschooling... Even then
there's crossover, because there's some kids who advance.
There's crossover, and there's, with homeschooling, you have students that are advancing. We might have a 12, 13-year-old in the class.
In the high school class.
And that's not
I think my daughter was 12 in
uncommon.
high school.
Yeah, that's not that uncommon to have a 12-year-old in a high school class. And so while they are absolutely understanding the material and they are, working at the same level as their peers, that doesn't mean that I want to explain that joke to them.
No, I don't want to explain the joke.
No.
So,
don't want to have them go home to their parents and ask their parents what that joke means either.
No. And so therefore, we started the YouTube channel. And we intend for a lot of history content to be on this YouTube channel.
Right.
We intend to teach history through this YouTube channel. But in just getting started and getting monetized, some crazy person decided that we're going to do Today in History.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
It's fine. I like the Today in History.
It's so much work.
It is.
No comment from the editor.
Well, and also, so the way that everything's sort of separated out, we have Tea Time, which is our take on homeschooling, on education, on curriculum development, that kind of thing. We have our young adults that have hot takes on all kinds of fun stuff, largely homeschooling related. And then our students are the ones behind the Scholarly Cheese Guild.
Right.
And so they are the ones that are writing these videos that we will then use in the classroom.
And they're slowly taking over Today in History also.
They are.
They're invading Today in History. So if you see a little tag that says written by teens, it's because they jumped in and they wrote it for us.
Yes.
I mean,
And every once in a while, you'll see my child who's featured in some of that stuff. He does a couple of the Today in Histories for us. He's part of the Scholarly Cheese Guild.
So if our channel seems a little schizophrenic, it's because there are 4 adults involved: me, Miss Meir, Miss Jordan, Miss Holly, sometimes Mr. Henry, sometimes Mr. Troy, and then a slew of
I'm waiting for the moment that we
teenagers.
get Mr. Les on here, and because he's not ever going to look at that camera and say, "My wife made me do this."
No,
because
it's not going to happen.
That's not his personality.
No. So and then we have a slew of teens also who are helping us out. But there's a thread that runs through it all, and it's all really about history. Not just history for history's sake, but history as a responsibility to learn about, teach, and discuss history. And not everybody likes that.
Well,
Bruh.
because I mean, also, and coming back to, we talked about those 2 extremes that we found in the homeschool curriculum. So when we decided to write our material, and we're like, we're going to create what we're teaching, there's not a snowball's chance of us leaving out the things that are uncomfortable. It's part of what people have done. It's part of history. You cannot teach the story of humanity and ignore the atrocities. Like, that's just not possible.
Right.
At the same time, and this is really, really hard, we do not want to leave our students with this jaded view that humanity has served its purpose and should just be exterminated at this point because people are awful. So we make an effort to really balance here are some amazing things that people do, and this is where this comes from, and let's try to do more of this, with this happened, and sorry.
So Miss Holly and I study YouTube. We know what the good advice is. We know, and we're not listening, because what the experts say is, if everyone likes your video, if you get a lot of thumbs up, good, keep doing that. If you get a lot of
thumbs down,
no,
comments,
no, views, then good, keep doing that. And don't do the things that get thumbs down. Don't do the things that don't get good views. I've noticed, especially during Black History Month, that anything that is not popular and happy and fluffy gets obliterated. I still have to do it. That is my responsibility to history. Thoughts?
And so they do the research and the watching and the, here's what you're supposed to do on YouTube. And I'm over here just like,
Oh, you're starting to get
petty. I don't care. And I'm the one who will get petty. I am the one who will see a comment and be like, oh, that made you uncomfortable? Cool. And then that's when I decide that the very first video for Women's History Month might need to be on the Matilda effect, because people are pointing out, oh, that woman didn't do that. These men did that. And I'm like, oh, so very interesting, because do you know that in history there is a trend, and has been there for a really long time, to just systematically ignore any contribution of women, especially in fields of science?
So yeah, so that's where we are. Let me put the neck back on hinge. It's just really fascinating to me that the audience reacts the way they react to history. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm like, but that was just a history thing, and that wasn't a big deal. And I get, you're a dirty stinking liar and something, and I'm just like, I went to bed going, that video was awesome, and I wake up to like, you suck, and then I'm like, Mary, wasn't this just a history fact?
Sometimes people are uncomfortable with history facts.
Now, the comments I love, and I think this has happened 3 times, is, hey, that's wrong. And here's what's right about it. And I'm like, oh, shoot. Actually, this is it. Or, actually, oopsies, you're right. Let me fix this video. I blurred out a date last week. I was like, that's wrong. Or actually, here's context, and actually, I'm going to make another video.
Right.
That's what I want more of.
That last one is really
so bad. I just want that.
Because
so bad.
We don't even have to have courteous interaction. Somebody can be rude.
I'd rather they not.
I mean, fair. Be as nice as you can be, but you know what? Even if you're not being nice, that's fine. If it continues the conversation, if it adds context, if there's more information, that's what we want.
Oh,
and we
remember one of my
absolutely
favorite
will make more
comments
videos on that. Yes.
Was add sources. Just add sources. That's all they said, but it felt viscerally. And I was like, I'm sorry. Here's the source. And they were like, oh, you're genuine. Okay. And then someone else said something meaner. And then I was like, you know what? This. And they were like, I have to apologize now. At the end of the day, we're really genuine humans, and we genuinely are in love with history. We are not history PhDs.
Nope.
We have masters in education.
Right.
So we're gonna get things off. I'm not gonna say wrong. We're gonna get things off sometimes. Correct us.
Oh, and actually, I started my bachelor's. I started out double majoring English and history.
Interesting.
I didn't keep the history.
I started with political science.
I didn't keep the history half of that degree because all of the professors whose classes that I went to were so dry. And so I wound up being like,
As was political science.
Yeah. I did bounce over to the art history department for a while.
Hence our love for getting history engaging and in context.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. Talk about how you learned history in high school.
No, Catholic school, K through 8. The nun would say, open your textbook. And I remember Ronald Reagan was the last president in that textbook. That's how old I am. He was currently president. Open your history book to page blah, 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 blah. And then copy down the next 5 pages. That was history. It was a penmanship lesson.
That's so unfortunate.
It sucked. Thank goodness my public high school history teachers were at least interested in what they were doing.
Right.
Because one, the ancient history guy was all over the architecture. We had to walk the neighborhood and he would point out influences. And then the 10th grade history class was a wannabe comedian. So the puns were a lot. And then 11th grade was a Jewish guy, and it was world history, and the Holocaust was traumatic, but we learned it. So, I mean, thank goodness for that. But, I just don't want to do that to kids.
And I found a passion for history when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, most students, they get to their senior year, you've taken most of your classes, your transcript is mostly completed, you know, unless you're going into a heavy math or science field, and then you're doubling down on some of that, which I knew I wasn't. I was in accelerated math through junior year in high school, and then did not understand imaginary numbers, and so I tapped out there. But my senior year, instead of just sort of playing, my second semester, I added, the whole year, I had AP European history. And then I added, for my second semester, I added military history and AP comparative government politics for funsies. None of this mattered to my high school transcript. That was just what I enjoyed.
I did business law and mock trials, so. My
military history teacher, Mr. Chaplack, who had also taught my AP US history the year before, was the most fascinating human. And for military history, they brought out a Sherman tank and parked it in the grass beside the high school, and they cranked it up so we could see it feel the ground. You know, and he would bring in whole dioramas and set up battles, and we loved every bit of it.
And so these are the things that we want to bring to our kids. We want to bring an experiential side of history. And so anything we put online, we want context. We want something people can latch onto. And so Black History Month was emotionally difficult for me, because every time I was like, this is a neat fact, people were like, no, this sucks. Look, black, blackity black, 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 black. You have to say it sometimes. I did this to my son when he had to learn a certain part of biography. I made him go to his room and say a certain word 40 times because he was freaking out. We have to get over it. There are Black people. There are Black things. It happened, and we have to discuss it. We don't have to be like, oh, white people are horrible. They did this to the Black people. No. But we have to say, hey, this happened, and we would prefer that never to happen again.
Well, and also, and this is coming from the history side of things, and the way that people have written history over the last 100 years, and the things that have been deemed important from history. We have Black History Month. We have Women's History Month.
Do we like them?
Well, but we have them because a lot of these things are not in standard history books, and they there's no reason that they shouldn't be. If everything was just all folded in, if the history books taught about the Black experience as part of the larger history conversation, if the history books included the women who did things. And that's actually, if you dive deeper into the Matilda effect, and the woman who wrote about that as part of her PhD and talked about like the room that she walked into in her program, which is, you know, a whole bunch of guys, and they're there and they're drinking and they're smoking pipes and they're talking about history, and she looks at them and says, but what about women? And, you know, weren't there women in science? Their answer immediately was no. But that's not true. And then they would start talking about, well, there was Marie Curie, because everybody kind of knows
you can't ignore her,
that she existed at least. You can't ignore her because she's the only woman to have won 2 Nobel Prizes. Like, even then, in that context, those historians...
But she got the first one off the back of her husband.
And that was their conversation was, oh, well, she was in science, but was she really anything more than a lab assistant to her husband? Y'all, she won a Nobel Prize after her husband died. So, yeah, she was absolutely...
And then her daughter followed in her footsteps, and then her son-in-law took her last name. No, this lady was somebody.
Talking about women's history, which we have been doing a video every day on Women's History Month. If you've noticed, we've been doing those a little bit differently, because the end card of each one shows something current event relevant to the historical topic that we did. And this is kind of tying back in with that, you know, critical thinking and how the study of history can actually be relevant to the modern world. And so we're trying to pair these historical topics with something that's a statistic or a commentary on our current world. Part of that is showing the relevance of history, because I'm the one that's been pulling those things together.
Just like I pulled together Black history.
Well, and also I'm not necessarily writing those scripts, because apparently the scripts that I write are boring.
No, the scripts you write are really smart.
Boring.
That's saying something about no. The script, her vocabulary is something else, so we just have to pull it back down sometimes. Go ahead.
But I've been pulling together the topics, and I've been pairing the facts with them, so that, you know, we're kind of telling this story with it. And part of my struggle, I don't want this to be a women's lives are terrible. And a lot of the statistics are like that. Some of that has to do just with data, just because people are measuring where problems are. So data in and of itself has sort of this intrinsic issue that you're going to be focused on the negative. So I've tried very specifically to find some positive things and put those on there, talking about like peace building, things like that. So some of the videos have hopefully a more positive tone. This isn't necessarily really intended to be activism either, though. And that's something that especially history education can be accused of, is because there absolutely is an educational philosophy to treat history and to treat education in general as a vehicle for political activism. And that's not the goal.
Sometimes your existence is an act of activism. Sometimes your existence in a certain room is an act of activism.
Sometimes asking a question with authority
is an act of activism.
But we're not trying to push a particular political agenda through this.
No.
Which then brings me to a particular topic that I actually struggled a little bit with the end card of. And so talking about women in higher education. Because ultimately, it's my hope that as humanity, we would love to see some equity for everyone, where the human life experience can be positive no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, that you have opportunity, that you have the ability to go make whatever kind of life it is that you desire. To me, that would be this truly wonderful goal of humanity. So we had kind of achieved this parity for a little while in higher education, where, you know, the number of women enrolled and seeking advanced degrees was pretty much on par with the number of men that were enrolled in seeking advanced degrees. And now it's kind of, and, you know, largely we're talking not truly global numbers, because they don't have numbers from every country, but most of the developed world, that's kind of shifted. And so now there are more women in higher education than the numbers suggest that there should be. And so that men are now underrepresented in higher education.
There are more black women in higher education than anyone else.
Right,
I can tell you why, but we won't go into that right now.
But here's the thing. To me, that's not necessarily a positive statistic. Like, at the end of the day, it's that kind of that parity, that that balance where you have higher education that's accessible to everyone. And you know, to me, that's also indicative of a problem. If there are guys that are like, well, we shouldn't be seeking out advanced degrees, we shouldn't be, you know, doing it, which is where that kind of comes from, that young men are enrolling in college less because they don't see a value to it. And so I think that you have to look at things like that too when you're talking about activism, when you're talking about numbers and data and statistics and things like that. I do feel like sometimes you can go too far.
I feel like the word is overcorrecting.
Overcorrecting. That's exactly what
I don't
it
know
is.
if it's overcorrecting. I have a different take, but no, that's another whole video.
That is another
I
whole
promise
video.
you.
Well, okay, I guess we're going to do numbers in higher education at some point in the future.
We should.
So, to that end, comment section. If you want to see us talk about the state of higher education in the United States, globally, whatever, let us know in the comments. If you want to see us talk about more stuff like this, if you have questions about anything that we touched on but didn't go into depth with, or if you just have some question that is completely irrelevant to any of it.
If you come across a video and have an honest comment, and when I say honest comment, I mean a comment that's not rhetorical, please ask it. We'd love to go deeper. We'd love to go further.
Right.
And we can't anticipate everything you want to know. We are always so willing to have more conversations.
And that's just it. Help us continue the conversation. So, next time.